So when it comes down to practicing the modes, what you really need to do is to begin with the major patterns, the major scale patterns, and begin on different scale degrees and do an octave. What I mean by that is you have your A major scale that you can play over this chord, of course, and by now you should know that it's L1, L2, R1, R2, D2, L1, right? And if you were to turn this all into scale degrees, this would be the first scale degree. Now, if you began on the second scale degree, and you went from here to here, but basing yourself on the major scale pattern that starts here. So pretend I'm playing this note, but then forget that I'm playing the note, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And that is what is called a Dorian scale. Now, if I don't play the first or second, and I start here, and still use that sequence, L1, L2, R1, R2, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And I'm, of course, excluding the flats for simplicity's sake, but this is the Phrygian based on the third scale degree. Then you skip the first three notes straight from the fourth scale degree. You'd have what's called a Lydian scale based on the fourth scale degree. And we'll talk about the differences between all these scales in a little while. Now, if you skip the first four, you would have, and starting here, so you'd have what's called a Mixolydian. It's major bass, but a little bit different from the major scale, and we'll talk about that as well. How about you skip the first 5 notes, and this should ring a bell. Starting here, and you started upwards. That sound familiar? That is the relative minor. So the 6th scale degree mode, based off of the major scale, of course, is a natural minor. So now that you understand the relative major and minor, you can use that knowledge in different contexts to justify knowing Mixolydian, Lydian, Phrygian, Dorian. And lastly, we could jump across all these 6 notes and go to the 7th, or just go down a semitone and play L1, L2, R2 upwards. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And that's called Locrian. One thing I skipped a little earlier, with the natural minor, that's called Aeolian. That has its own name. And the main major is called the Ionian, or Ionian on the first scale degree. They all have their own individual names. And hopefully now you can begin to see how all these scales are connected. We're going to go into greater detail about the ways to connect them and to memorize them.